people get involved in your campaign. They say, you know what, I love this woman. I love what she's doing. She's fighting for us. This is John Villarreal reporting for Conservative New Media.
Go to conservativeNewMedia.com. Also go to YouTube and type in Conservative New Media, and you can check it out. Or go to KFIV.com, and you can check out my page and links to the video of the week and all that type of stuff. Right, it's been a fast show. We're talking a lot. We're getting crazy here. I'm talking right now. We're going to bring in Dan Riehl. This guy is the real deal, right? He's a blogger and a political consultant from New Jersey who's now based in Washington, D.C. This guy's the insider who's also an outsider. You can check out his great pieces on RealWorldView.com. That's spelled RiehlWorld View.com. And there you go. Dan, what's going on?
Same old stuff, you know, swinging and swinging back.
I love it. Now, see what we like about you, and we got Paul here too. See, we love it because you just get into it with these people. You don't take it from the insiders. You're not going to have this kind of BS going on. I mean, what'd you make of what went down in Delaware this week?
Well, you know, I think it was obviously. I mean, a lot of the Beltway establishment media, including the conservatives stripe, pretty much disgraced itself.
Oh my God!
I don't think we want to let them forget it, because I think we have. It's not that we're not allies, but there's a media battle to be fought too. There is a certain elitist element that has controlled a lot of conservative media, and in some ways, I think they've become a little soft, a little more aligned with Washington. That's not to say they aren't good people or sharp people, but sometimes I don't think they see things quite the way the people of America see them. And, you know, one thing I was thinking, listening to the end of your wrap-up, I mean, in some ways, I think we have to start taking control of our narrative. This has to be less about some conservative right-wing ascendancy than it does kind of the ascendancy of the average American people.
Amen. That's what I'm saying.
Involved in politics.
That's right.
You know, they tried to paint Reagan as a far right-wing ideologue, and really,
and a B actor, an idiot,
a good American, representing a lot of good Americans. And so I don't think we want to give away the narrative about this. I think we want to control it ourselves and not play into things that they use to demonize us or marginalize us.
I totally agree. It is a battle right now, as Limbaugh has said, as we have said, between D.C. and everybody else, the rest of the country. And I mean, when you saw Rove melt down and they try to spin it, oh, he was being an analyst. No, let me tell you, and I like Karl Rove a lot, and he's from Texas, we're from Texas, and I respect his ability. But I mean, that guy, that was personal. I told Paul, because we were watching it live, and Paul, did I not say this? I said, there is more to the story here. This is too vicious. This is too personal. He was somehow involved in this race, or he has something on the line here. Didn't I say that, Paul?
Yeah, you did call that, John, and I wasn't sure about that at the time, but then going afterwards, we found out, and I know Dan knows this as well, that apparently, according to a man that's on a video, that's I guess a member of the Tea Party, he said, look, Karl Rove came in and talked to the Tea Parties and said, look, you need to back Mike Castle. And with Rove's reaction after Christine O'Donnell won, it appears as though there were sour grapes that it didn't go his way.
Oh, it was sour grapes and it was vicious. And we see it here. We see it at the RNC level, and I like some good people at the RNC. And I know, you know, you've got some involvement there, Dan, or at least that's what I thought. But you know, we see it here in California Republican Party. I mean, these people, they think they know everything, the insiders, and they're so funny. They like to make fun of us. All these people do is lose over here. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. Their record in districts that are even somewhat competitive is abysmal.
Right, and that's why I think we have to understand this more in terms, and I hate to use this kind of class war stuff, but we really do have to look at this more as a movement that's of the people, a lot of, you know, the majority of the American people, which is us and who we represent, versus a sort of ruling class that in some ways, and I'm not saying the Republicans and the Democrats are the same, but there are ruling class elements within, you know, both parties that like to sit at the top of the food chain, and Reagan had to fight against them to eventually emerge, and we're going to have to do the same thing. And it's that establishment, primarily Northeast. I mean, when you look at the top Democrats and top Republicans, well, great many of them, you know, they went to the same universities, they got the same education, they think differently in some ways, but from a conservative perspective, not quite enough to be good enough for us, because, you know, when I look at it, I say, well, if we let the establishment go, which I consider more East Coast elitist, in control, what they're kind of saying is, well, yeah, we're not Democrats. We're going to get there in 20 years as opposed to 10.
Right.
And
we'll really America in 20 years
to a lot of us.
So let's name names. Let's get specific. And we want to get to this White House insider thing. I know you're hot on that. We're hot on that, too. Who is the problem here on the Republican side? I want to name some names. What do you want? We're talking Dana Perino. We're talking Rove. We're talking Mike Murphy, David Brooks. Name some names from.
David Brooks. Obviously, I think you have your David Fromms, but you also have your Karl Roves. And you know, if you look at it, a lot of these people really are, you know, what they call bushies. What happened under Bush, and look, I loved George Bush. I stood by him through his 8 years, and I still do, but that doesn't negate the fact that what was obvious when he came to power, or came, you know, to the presidency, he had a relatively liberal domestic agenda. He was a big government guy.
Compassionate conservatism, remember that?
Passionate conservatism. So they took our, you know, conservatism, and really compassionate. All that really was another word for it was government's going to make you okay.
Spending, right? Dan,
you know, so it's the same thing. And we have to reject that. And I think as we get into, I mean, look, let's put names on them. You know, as we look at Romney, as we look at, and here's one I think a lot of people will be surprised at: Huckabee.
Oh yeah.
You know, yeah, he's socially conservative. But this guy is very much into the government can provide for you mentality.
Dan, can you hold on with us for one more break here?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. I love what you're saying here. I want to get into it more, and we're going to take your calls at the back end of this break. We're talking to Dan Riehl, and you're listening to the John D. Villarreal Show on the Conservative New Media Radio Network. Karl Rove's meltdown this week, and we're also talking about a White House insider. We're breaking some news today here, at least on the Conservative New Media Radio Network, about what's going on with the Obama administration. Now, Dan was in the middle of talking about some of the people that are really rhinos and really kind of the problem on the conservative the conservative movement side. And Dan, what is the motivation for these rhinos? I know you in your piece right here, you really called out the Beltway boys, right? Garrity and the Beltway boys punked themselves over Christine O'Donnell. What was your point with that? I mean, what is the motivation for these rhinos?
Well, I think that, you know, some of them have, and they may be, or it's the same thing as when a politician goes to Washington.
Right.
You get inside that bubble, you start getting your news from the Washington Post and the New York Times, and you start thinking more like a creature of Washington than the creature of the grassroots. And so it's not that they're intentionally, you know, that they're devious or have some plan. I think it's just that, you know, we are what we eat, who we sit with, who we talk with every day. And so I think you get this group think that begins to get comfortable and says, you know, we've got this pretty good thing going here inside the, you know, in our little Beltway thing, and we're real smart. And, you know, I don't know that we need these millions of people out here to tell us that they have a better idea, or we're right and they're wrong. And I think ultimately, while we're on the same side, it's just a very nuanced difference of not, you know, as you're inside something, you get comfortable with it. And I think some of our conservative pundits lose their fear of the ever increasing, you know, creep of government, because they become more a part of it and they're not exposed to it as much. They're not really they get more excited about the politics and the legislation and the, you know, the political maneuvering, and they lose sight about a lot of us out here who feel like, look, with what Obama's tried to do, you know, this is like Dunkirk. I mean, we're at the edge of the ocean. We're going to get pushed off. And we're going to eventually, this country's just going to take a slide down into the European socialist left, or we're going to start fighting every battle like it's the last battle, and start just stepping up and smashing our enemies in the face, instead of reaching out a hand and making deals that continually cost us room and space until we just wind up getting pushed right into the ocean.